Hey, welcome people of the internet. Today's an awesome day for me. I get to be with one of my heroes, Dr. Chip Dodd from Nashville, Tennessee here, and we're going to be talking about mental health, our own journeys, and anything else we stumble into. So it's going to be a couple of nerds, and so if you want to check out, peace out. This is going to be awesome. So,
and we just met.
We
already know each other.
That's what's so great. Oh, it makes my heart feel good. Yes. So yeah, I got a PhD in 2010 in education and was just an administrator in colleges and universities. And then I just ran head on to this thing where suddenly my body wasn't acting like I wanted it to. And that was my first run-in with anxiety and my first run-in with performance. And this is, you do these things and you achieve, and that's where your value comes from. And so I stumbled literally back into a new job, into a new place, and ended up nickel and diming my way towards a second PhD in counseling. I had to know what had happened to me. And all of my work with my students, it just shifted almost overnight about a decade ago from I want to graduate to I think I'm going to kill myself. And I didn't have the tools. And so it was an abrupt shift, and that's been my journey the last decade. And so then I got... as we were talking offline, my research was about the mental health of doctors and lawyers and preachers.
Really?
And the Dave Ramseys of the world.
Yeah.
Those folks that if they're not well, they take down thousands.
I cannot believe you're
Right?
saying this, because I started the Center for Professional Excellence in 1996 with one premise, that if we treat the influencers, the social servants of society, and they're healthy, we're all good. If they're sick, we're all in trouble. Can you believe that?
Geniuses.
And
Geniuses,
a
you and
couple
I.
of nerd geniuses, as long as we're in the black
That's
room by
right,
ourselves.
right.
But and the focus was on medicine, academia, theology, and jurisprudence.
Stop, dude.
Yeah. Can you believe that?
Those are my exact ones.
Those are
Presidents
the
of
guys.
colleges,
Right.
lawyers, doctors,
Did
preachers.
you find out that pastors and doctors, physicians, are more similar in terms of their mental shape than other professions, because they tend to spike on, a lot of people may not understand, so I don't know if I need to say it, but psychopathic deviance and mania. They're certain that they're right,
Yes.
no matter what, and they'll do whatever it takes to succeed, to be right?
Well, where I found it shift, and yes, 1,000%, and even college presidents are very similar.
Yeah.
College presidents and attorneys tend to come from what I would call knowledge-centric bases, right?
Yeah.
They are constantly mining the world for more info, whereas a doctor and a pastor has the info, and their job is to bestow upon us.
It, yeah.
Right? There's a sense of elevation and power.
Absolutely.
I became fascinated
and deep
by
insecurity.
Oh my gosh!
If they,
Man, it becomes unmooring, right? I became really passionate about it from a different lens. I noticed that as I moved through the higher ed leadership circle, as my friends got promoted, we couldn't hang out anymore. And I understood why. Because if some knucklehead sends a Facebook post from the wrong house, I was a liability as a friend, or as friends of mine who were graduating in med school and they were physicians and they started doing physician-y things, or I was a dean of students at a law school, and all they wanted to do was to, depose the poor woman at the register, right?
Yeah.
They became so lonely, and they had nobody in their world to bump up against.
Yeah.
And I was recognizing myself, holy smokes, dude, you have nobody. Who keeps you accountable, Delony? Or when somebody doesn't agree with you, I dismiss them because I had the academic.
They're a threat, or you're above them.
That's
they don't
right.
Get it. Yeah.
And it just was, and suddenly, I think we have a pathology of.
I did this thing, the 5 pitfalls of leadership, and which I bet you'll find extremely familiar. If your work becomes your worth, you've already started on the path of being in trouble.
Right.
Your performance matters more than your person or your presence. Right.
Right.
And then people become objects.
Yep.
In terms of
the tools.
They're people you have to. You're always having to move people around, or tools. Then secrets take over because you're not getting your needs met anywhere.
That's right.
So you live behind the scenes, and nobody knows.
Right.
And then finally you're isolated.
Yeah.
And at that point,
and then when you do stupid things when we're isolated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether it's suicide or get caught within your addiction somewhere else. Or
That's
something.
right.
It's just tragic.
Yeah.
We're created to be known.
That's right.
I wrote The Voice of the Heart. I mean, it says that you and I are created as emotional and spiritual creatures. Neuroscience backs this up left and right now, finally.
I know, right?
It's finally. I'm like, yeah. And you know what neuroscience is confirming? They'll mess it up, I'm sure. But neuroscience is confirming the truth of ancient scripture. And I did this thing called the ladder of success.
Okay.
And if the way you're born, as you know, the Apgar is a testimony to the way we're birthed, and that's made to grow. You know, you're made to cry out, reach out, and take in.
Okay.
And Jesus says, when you're grown, it's like you do not receive because you do not ask. He said, ask and you shall receive. Seek and you will find, and knock and the door will be open to you. Well, that's staying in the Apgar in a mature way. Cry out, ask, you will receive, right?
Yep.
And seek and you will find, which means reach out.
Okay.
And then knock and the door will be open to you. It's like take it in so you can grow and go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's not made the change. But what happens is our society cultivates how am I doing culture, self-esteem, rather than what am I doing with my worth. So we climb the ladder of how am I doing. And so I'm only as good as you say I am.
Right.
So we practice becoming independent from how we're created. We say reality says it is what it is. If you can't take it, get out of the way. So I'm better than you. And then the idea of that power makes me somebody. So we climb the ladder, and so we're in competition with everyone and compared to everybody.
All day long.
Yeah. Not until we fall off the ladder. If we're fortunate, we fall from 7 rungs.
Right.
But if you climb the ladder to the top, all of us have found out there's just more ladder.
That's right.
The ladder, it's eternal.
It just keeps going.
You go from being freshman to senior
Right.
But if you fall, the end of your life is the beginning.
Well, but the taller the ladder gets, the more people you land on when you fall.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, the more people are hurt along the way, more people you knock off along the way. But then when we come to the place where we can say, how am I doing from the standpoint of, yes, I want to hear feedback. But the real question of our lives is to say, what am I doing? What am I doing? Where am I coming from? Where am I headed? Who's going to help me? What am I feeling? What's the truth about what's happening in my heart? And who do I tell? Do you know? Because nobody knows how to live until you get here. And you have to learn along the way.
And then right when you figure it out, you're out.
Yeah, exactly. When you figure it out, you're done, and you can't tell anybody. And they have to learn themselves.
That's right.
I mean, machines we can create to have knowledge after we're here or before we're here, right? Okay.
Yep.
But every child who is born comes in having to do it all over again.
Right.
So dependency is the key. Good, healthy dependency is the key that unlocks the treasure trove of living fully.
And we've pathologized dependency.
Yeah.
As though you're broken.
Yeah, something's wrong with
you.
For
needing community.
Right, for being needy. Yeah, and we're created for need. And that's how children become ashamed. They are told something's wrong with you for your tears.
Right.
And remember the song, It's a Small World? It's a world of laughter and a world of tears. It's a world of hope and a world of fears. So don't you think it's time we're aware that, hey, we're all alike. 99.9% DNA is identical.
Right.
We're emotionally and spiritually created identically, and yet we practice doing everything we can to hide from how we're made.
We've begun to pathologize basic humanity. You've been around longer than me. When did this start? Well, and they always hassle me about big words. Pathologize, that feeling sad, means you're broken.
What's amazing is it's as old as we are, and it's as new as about there was something when the idea of industrialization kind of moved us towards this is all going to fix it. And then industrialization, pharmacy, science didn't fix it. And then we have sort of like a postmodern breakdown. There is no fix. So then we're all alone, and there's your truth, my truth, instead of a consistent truth.
Gotcha.
So that just grows us to separate from each other.
Okay.
And then addiction becomes actually an answer, not feeding.
It fills the gap.
Because to feel means to need, and God's gone.
Okay.
So industrialization, postmodernism, and all these things kind of has removed God from the picture. Right. And our struggle from then on has been Will we use our brains, our frontal lobe,
Yep.
to speak what's happening in the darker region, the heart? Will we use our frontal lobe to express our hearts, or will we use our frontal lobe to hide our hearts? Because the frontal lobe is always saying, is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? So if I find out it's safe, I can ask the second question, do you care?
Gotcha.
Do you care? Do I matter? Are you with me? Because we're literally born looking for who's looking for us.
Right.
We're so made for relationship.
That's right.
We're created
totally
for connection.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah.
I mean, it is astounding to me. And because we've been wounded, because we've been raised in ignorance, ignoring what's happening, because we've been raised to be ashamed, because we've been raised in dissociative worlds, we vow to work against how we're created, so it won't, the bad things won't happen again. We won't be rejected. We will still belong and matter.
Yeah.
So we start climbing that ladder of being more powerful and performing more, and or the climbing the ladder of not caring.
Yeah.
It's just getting away from the heart.
So on a journey to work with folks who were over a bunch of stuff and found themselves alone, I also begin to notice that same challenge in the fancy nerd world, as they call it, secondary traumatic stress, right? Folks like you, folks like more so you, who are in helping professions, who take other people's bricks for a living. 30 years of addiction work, 30 years of what I would call high-level intellectual sparring with smart folks, right? To quote Van der Kolk, the body keeps a score. You wear some of this. How over the last 20, 30 years have you kept yourself whole?
That is a great question. The cool thing was in this intellectual sparring, just to speak to that first, is that I would let these guys know, look, you're smarter than I am, tougher than I am, probably more moral because you lasted longer. You know?
Right.
And these guys go to Harvard, they go to Stanford, they go to these places. And yet, guy's sitting there with his liver distended. He's 56 years old, looks like an 85-year-old man.
Right.
And he's smarter than I am. He is tougher than I am.
Right.
And he was able to keep the secret. That's a form of morality, as crazy as it sounds. He knew what was right or wrong, and he could hide the wrong.
Right.
And people didn't know.
Right.
And yet I say, but I've got something you don't have.
Yeah.
I've got heart.
I sleep at night.
I sleep at night sometimes.
Sometimes, right.
But I have heart. I have what you had to leave behind. I got back. I have recovery of how I was created.
Okay.
I can use my brain to express my heart. I'm connected. It's called integrated. When your head and heart work together, when the parent and the child grow up, it's integration. You know. So that's number one. Number two, I have a real passion. I'm 30 years into this, and I'm not burned out, and I'm not worn out. I get tired as heck, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Plus, I'm old. But
real old.
Yeah, really old. That's so funny. Yeah. But anyway, so I don't know why I laugh at myself about that. But I think I'm just shocked that I'm old. But this when I became awakened to how we're really made, it became a drumbeat inside of me. Like, I want to do whatever I can to help people see who they're made to be so they can do what they're made to do. So that's number two. I mean, it's a passion, which means I'm willing to be in pain for something that matters more than pain. So I'm beating this little drum. I'm going to beat it till I die. Thank God I've got something to care about.
Keep going, right.
And the third thing is about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I've moved out of the addictions world to focus on advancing wellness with chipdodd.com from here on out.
Okay.
But it hit me, the toll addiction world had taken on me. I had become hard. And I don't mean hard as in hard-hearted, but in terms of like harsh. Because I knew and could see this thing's killing you, and I'm not sitting around and watch it happen. So that sort of became my, like, I'm not sitting around watching this happen.
Gotcha.
And I became like right on the edge of unmerciful for anybody who didn't see that they needed help with something.
Gotcha.
So I would a little bit ferocious with the ego.
Okay.
And sometimes I'd bash into the, little tough.
What called you on that? Or who called you on
that? Friends.
Okay.
The people around me said, "Dude, you're like that's too much."
Okay.
I'm like, and it was my own powerlessness in the midst of all of that, and I kept seeing people die. I mean, The Hope in the Age of Addiction is a very powerfully hopeful book, but it's also about the Titanic sinking. Like we were doing some podcasts with the other author, and we were about to leave the problem for the solution. And I said, before we depart the problem, I've got to sit here for just a minute, Stephen. It's the guy, Stephen James. I said, I need to sit for a minute because I'm in a lifeboat. I can hear the water moving around me. My oars are up. It's cold as heck. And I can see in the distance, I'm far enough away not to be sucked into it, but I'm watching a ship on fire, and I'm watching it sink, the Titanic, and it's the Titanic of addiction. And there are people who wouldn't get off the boat, and all they're doing is moving deck chairs around, and they're playing the piano. And I've got to sit here and grieve for a minute before I row away, because I've spent my career rowing towards the Titanic.
Right.
And now it's like, if we do not have a revolution of neediness and a revolution of feeling in our culture, genuine feeling, not reactions to feelings. Because right now we live in a culture that says, I've got a feeling, you've got a problem, instead of I've got a feeling and can you help me?
Right.
So, I don't mean to be negative, but I am prescient. I've seen, I'm not living in denial, and I'm not dissociated. But to a culture in denial and a culture that's dissociated, they're not seeing it. They're not seeing the truth.
Right.
I mean, if you saw the addiction numbers, I hope you'll get that book. Honestly,
I'll get it.
The addiction numbers, John. The addiction numbers are going to make you stare in shock about what's happening in our culture. We'll do anything to keep from feeling, and that's how far away we've moved from literally how we're created.
I heard a reframe the other day that was pretty powerful. Is November, which feels like 150 years ago.
Doesn't it?
But it's when JAMA's article, the Journal of American Medical Association, came out and said for the third year in a row, the average U.S. life expectancy had dropped again. And they framed it, and I love this, they are now framing it as diseases of despair. You may have heard that, which was addiction and suicide. And the third, it was the big one, was organ disease failure. And they've now taken liver disease and heart disease and said, this is just long-tail suicide.
Amazing. Have you seen Lynch's book,
No.
The Medical Consequences of Loneliness, I believe?
No.
What he said, now I sort of teased all of this out. He's done the book twice. He started a longitudinal study, I think in the 70s, and he came back in 2013 and
Just dinging the alarm.
Yeah, he said it again. That heart disease and not being able to live fully in relationship are correlated.
Yeah.
Okay? That when a person is talking and not telling the truth about what's happening within them, cortisol goes up, which you know is plaque.
Yeah.
And when a person's not talking and withholding the truth, same thing, blood pressure, cortisol, the effects of heart disease. But when a person, like you and I right now, I feel completely at home with you. I feel interested in what I'm doing. You look like you're interested.
I'm a good-looking guy.
Yeah. I even forgot what a good-looking guy you are.
And way younger.
And a super nerd.
I was super nerdy, that's right, yeah.
But I'm interested in what we're talking about, and based upon your appearance,
I am too,
you
yeah.
are too.
Yeah.
And so when the truth is being spoken, blood pressure goes down.
Right.
So it's heart healthy to be connected truthfully in heart to other interested people, because we're made to delight in each other. We're made to be curious about each other's hearts. To curious about, like, who are you, how'd you get here, and what happened?
Right.
Out of empathy, because I know what it's like to be human, and guess what? I know what it's like to be in pain, so I can have a passion for yours, compassion. We're made to delight. We're made to be curious. We're also made to stand in each other's way. And that's what my life into addictions treatment world was. I'm standing in your way. I've already been where you're headed, and you don't have to go there. So I was very much involved in the compassion piece, you know. And then finally, I'm willing to hurt, but not be harmed by you, which entails all kinds of things. So, we're made for that. And those four things make up love, and those four things make up community.
Are you married? You got kids?
Yeah.
So
2 sons.
Answer this as much as you feel like it.
Yeah.
how have they worn and or absorbed your work over the years? Or how have you shielded them from your work?
You know
over the
what?
years?
That is great. One of my sons said to me, Dad, I didn't even know what you did until I was like 16 or 17, because all you kind of told me was that you helped heal broken hearts. But he did say the first time he was actually in the place where I worked, I started. It was called the Center for Professional Excellence in Nashville. And the first time he was in the building, he said, Dad, I thought I was never allowed here, never allowed in this building. So obviously he had taken the idea that me not sharing enough about what I did.
Was you were in the FBI or something?
Yeah, that he had turned it sort of into like it's not, we can't talk about it.
Gotcha.
At the same time, I didn't burden them with what all it meant.
Right.
However, if I could change anything as a parent, I think that when the fear of what could happen if they didn't stay focused, if we didn't stay above all the addictive impress of our society, I think I pushed a little too hard on these things can happen if you don't, if you drink, if you get operated on and you're on a narcotic. I mean, I come from the addictions world. I mean, I come literally genetically from the addictions world.
Right.
So, I mean, I come from a background. I think sometimes that colored my talk of theirs, or treatment of theirs. So I would say I ended up probably being a little more controlling than I wish I'd been.
So my dad was a homicide detective, and in the same vein, hopefully that gives you some peace. I recognized one day that when it was, hey, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, that in my world, those things never happen, ever. His particular job, your particular job, your gifts to humanity were dealing with the outside the bell curve situations, right? All day, every day. And what I noticed over the years is that outside the bell curve stuff that never happens, it happens 10 times to 6 million people in Houston where we grew up.
Yeah.
Those were the 10 hours of his Monday and the 10 hours of his Tuesday, right? So that was his entire bell curve, right? And it was when I shifted out and thought, oh, he's just loving me the best he knows how, right? And what a gift that ended up being. I did grow up thinking that someone was going to be knocking on our door to wipe us out at any moment.
Yeah,
yeah.
Now, the saving grace about is that I was able to implement and practice the very things that how we're created. So I had written The Voice of the Heart. About first son was like 8 at the time, so we've been practicing the feelings world.
What a gift!
Oh man, you're not kidding.
So I want to talk about that. This book, when I first took this job at Ramsey Solutions, I walk in the door. Multiple people are like, hey, you got to read this book. This book's for you. You got to read this book.
And not for me, but for it.
I mean, it's, and then it's on a second printing. And coming from a mental health background, I hadn't heard it. And I sat through this, and I kept thinking, have I not heard this?
Yeah.
And so there's some unique things. Can you give a high-level overview of this?
Yep. High-level overview. The book says that you and I are created as emotional and spiritual creatures created to live fully, okay? But we can't live fully unless we're doing that in relationship with ourselves, others, and God. We've been given 8 tools to be able to live fully in a tragic place. 8 feelings, right? If you don't know the primary colors, you can't become an artist, right? Red,
Yep.
Red, blue, and
I don't know. I've got a 4-year-old. I should know those.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you can't be a painter if you don't know the core colors.
Right.
To mix and match. So these 8 feelings aren't restrictions. They're actually the way we end up creating the tones and the multiplicity of living. But we have 8 core feelings that let us live fully in a tragic place.
Right.
Fear is about our tragedy of life. Loneliness, hurt, sadness. Anger is actually what moves us through life. Healthy shame, guilt, gladness. I mean, these are the tools that move us into asking for help.
I've heard 2 people in the world say this, and you're one of them. The other is Rage Against the Machine. And you both say anger's a gift.
Amen.
Tell me about that.
Well, rage and anger are very separate.
Okay.
As separate as, say, ocean is from land.
Okay.
Rage is a destructive force that a person enacts to hide from having to experience terror, to remove themselves from re-experiencing something they swore they'd never go through again, or to keep from having helplessness. Anger is a feeling. The most vulnerable of all the feelings is the energy moving towards whatever it is that matters to me that's worth being in pain over. Okay? Anger is the most vulnerable feeling of all because it shows what I care about. Synonyms for anger, all vulnerable words. I hunger, I thirst, I yearn, I long, I hope, I dream, I wish, I want, I need. All of those are reaching open hand. Help me, show me, tell me. And then the gift of anger, which is the voice of the heart. It's the voice of life. I mean,
how did all these become pathologies?
Well, because I think one is one.
Like we write prescriptions for every one of those words you just said.
Every 1 in 3 people, according to this internist I talked to, he said every 3 people coming to my office right now are coming in to be medicated for depression or anxiety. Which now I know that there's the clinical brain stuff of those things.
Dude, anxiety is just an alarm system. It just says you're out of whack.
It says also underneath that is I'm afraid.
Yes.
And if I don't know what to do with fear or haven't been trained to acknowledge fear and seek help with fear, then anxiety takes its place. Depression takes the place of anger or pride. When we depress the energy of our voices, when we push it down, Archimedes said that he discovered that a ball of air has an equal and increased pressure to rise the more you push it down. Right?
Yep.
So
it's like holding a rubber ball underwater, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we start using willpower and our intellect and moral teachings to suppress expression of how God made us. So the teachings of our life, both Christian and non-Christian, are both teaching us to hide from who God made. And so when we give up our anger, we're giving up God.
Yeah.
If you understand anger.
Right.
In fact, if you look at Philippians 4:8, it's an amazing test. It says, brothers, sisters, think on these things, which really means focus on desiring, right?
Right.
Let your head and heart match, because these are things that matter. Whatever is lovely, pure, true, right, just, or maybe adding to a couple, but whatever is true, whatever is praiseworthy or admirable, the noble life, seek it, go after it. Let nothing stop you from it. But if you can't have your anger, if you can't have the passion, the willingness to be in pain for something that matters more than pain, all those ideals are sunk.
Because there's no gasoline in that engine, right?
None.
Huh.
And also, if you don't have anger, you can't express your hurt, your sadness, your fear, your loneliness.
Right.
Like when I get rejected or somebody hurts me, it's like, ow, man, that hurt, whether it's physical or somebody verbally.
Right.
If you listen to the words, it's in the book, but if you listen to the words that we use to describe the hurt of life, the rugs pulled out from under me, it blindsided me, it was like it speared me, it went right through me. I mean, that's violence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our hearts are experiencing words even, or looks, as wounds, because we're so made to be relationally connected.
Right.
If we hide our hurt, we will bleed to death.
Yep.
If we cry out and express our hurt, we can heal and be stronger for it. Because the hurt brings us to healing, and healing brings us to courage. I'm experienced, and guess what? I'm going to still live.
Because I made it through.
I'm heading back in, and now I know how to do it better.
Yep.
You always send an older soldier in with younger soldiers. The guy knows hurt and healing, and therefore he has more wisdom and courage about how to go do it. So anger is amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't mean acting out, but we live in a society that's terrified of feelings. And anger is the most expressive of the feelings because it says, I am here.
Right.
And this matters to me. And I have these feelings, and I have this wish, and I have this desire, and I have this longing. All of a sudden, people are going like, "Oh boy, trouble just stepped in here,"
And so I've got 18 million different numbing compression behaviors to get rid of it.
Boy, that's well said. Self-cures, and we have 10 million self-cures called addiction or compulsions,
and 20 million other people trying to sell me a new one
to get rid of how I'm made. Now, I don't disagree with antidepressants on any level, okay?
Right.
But 187 million prescriptions for the top 3 antidepressants. Top 3. Now, there are like 30. So the top 3 were written in like 2016 or 15 or something. So,
And it's been a near vertical trend line since then, even. So
yeah.
we're
Well,
in
and
it.
you've seen, especially in the higher education since
Oh,
2013,
it's bananas, man.
the girl and boy population in colleges
Yeah.
were anxiety and depression. Then in 2013-ish, the rate for females went up because of the left out, missed out syndrome. I mean, social media is presenting a world that they're not included in.
So I read
So anxiety's going like
an
crazy.
extraordinary book by Robert Sapolsky called Behavior, and he's a baboon researcher out of Stanford. But he talked about something I've never read before, and he studied the same troop of baboons over 30 years. And he talked about our standing in whatever community we have is co-regulated at all times. And he said it's the difference between the assistant director of the mailroom that gets moved up to associate director in their little group of 12, and they are like this, and they feel esteemed, and they feel included, and they feel appropriate. And the CEO or the CFO that gets passed over to be the CEO and can only look at the one that made it above him and not the 999 others. And it talked about we are all co-regulated in our standing with other people. And the moment they handed out those boxes, there was never not somebody in the world that we couldn't see that was better looking or richer or faster or skinnier or whatever than us. And it totally dysregulated all of us instantly overnight.
Yeah, comparison is the thief of contentment and joy.
Right. Well, man.
So good Ramsey ending.
I keep my paycheck coming one more month, man. I'm so grateful that you came by. And it's good to meet you today.
It's like we just met.
Out.
This is how I like to meet. This is a great way to meet.
I know. I love this. This is good. Where can people find you?
ChipDodd.com.
Okay. 2 Ds?
Yeah, DODD.
Get this book, people. What's wrong with you? Get the book. People in the booth are waving. Like, get the book. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Needs of the Heart, Parenting with Heart, Keeping Heart. I love Keeping Heart.
Yeah.
It's about reawakening to some old things we forgot, like your grandmother talked about. It talks about some of those things.
We are not as smart as we think we are, man.
No, man. And you know what? It's like I wrote a novel called Anthem to the Invisible. Don't read it, but get it on audiobook.
Okay.
It's about how the ancient is always true. It's the river of life we've got to learn how to swim and float in.
Yeah. See old roads,
Going
man.
to the land is hyperphoria, trying to control things, or hypophoria, trying not to care.
Yeah.
But in the river of life where euphoria is, bearing life well, there's joy, sadness, hurt, loss, hope, connecting. Life.
It just is.
Is where we're made to live, living fully. Bless you, man. Thank you, John.
This is John Delony. This is the stud, Dr. Chip Dodd. We'll talk to you
old
soon.
Stud.
The old stud.
Don't forget the old thing.
That's right. Hey, take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.